The 50 Podcast.
50 Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 50 Podcast. I'm Haley, your host, and today I'm so excited. We are here with Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. She is a 911 dispatcher, a podcast host, a dedicated dispatcher advocate and trainer, public speaker, and social media personality. Thank you so much for being here, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So for our listeners who don't know you, give them a quick bio about yourself, and then after we'll peel back the layers and get a little deeper. So if you want to give us a quick bio, you have the floor.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a 911 dispatcher. I think it's a classic story where I went to school for law enforcement, got my undergrad and graduate degrees in criminal justice. I was going to be a cop. Spent some time doing social work after I graduated and coaching basketball. And then one day I got tired of being broke. It was like, I need to dabble into this field that I got all this education, all my degrees in. Started applying, and dispatch landed first. So that's kind of how I found myself there.
And it stuck.
It stuck. It has stuck in such a big way that I never expected it to stick. And, I think all these things that I've done and are doing for the industry is really because I had such a great training experience at my agency. So, trainers, how you treat your trainees matters,
Yeah, absolutely. In all fields. I couldn't agree more. So we're going to go over your foundation in dispatch, who you are and how you got here. I love to hear how people grew up and how they got into these crazy fields, because we all have to be a little crazy to do these jobs, right? And then we're going to get a little deeper. So where did you grow up and how was your family foundation?
Yeah, I grew up in the Bay Area in California. For those who aren't familiar with that, it's like San Francisco, Oakland, kind of that realm, that area. I had a great upbringing. I played basketball my whole life. Super supportive family, who never they knew I didn't like the word no, so they didn't say it very often. Really supported me in all these wild, crazy things that I would go on to do. I actually got sick when I was really young, and I think that is a big focal point in my upbringing and kind of realizing at a young age that things aren't promised. You have to kind of move at a certain pace. And yeah, I think that really shaped my life and shaped how when I knew I wanted to do something, I knew I could go do it. And I had a great family that supported all those things.
That's great. That's so good to hear. What inspired you to become a dispatcher? I know you mentioned getting a good job, a stable job, and I can say the same. Trust me, my story is not some glorious story of how I wanted to just be a lifesaver every day. So I totally get it. But what inspired you to become a dispatcher? And then tell us your background in dispatching.
Yeah, like I said, it started with just applying, right? I was applying to all of these things that were open and going for interviews. And I went and did a sit-along, which is the same as a ride-along for a patrol. You go and you sit with the dispatcher, you plug in, you sit back and you watch them work, And I did my sit-along with my department. And I left that experience going, wow, this is so cool. I could totally do this. I sat along with a great dispatcher. His name was Nick. And he just had this way about him that even in crisis, tone never changed. Was able to help folks, even callers who aren't that kind. I mean, they never fazed Nick. And it was just a very humbling experience to sit with him and walk out of there going, this is something I could do. This is something I can get behind. I think you're going to be really good at this,
Yeah. And how long have you been dispatching for?
Since August of 2018. My academy mate yelled at me the other day because I was like, I think I'm at 5.5 years, almost 6. And she was like, we're at 6. Don't months away. It was like August 10th of 2018. We started again.
Literally like your anniversary now.
It's literally the anniversary this week, which is so funny. I'm like, it's trauma. I put that out of my head, Academy. It's
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that too, the Academy.
Yeah.
But what's been your favorite part of being a dispatcher? What makes you feel like the best? When you leave work at the end of your shift, what makes you feel good?
I think, I think most people say like, oh, I help people. And like that, obviously, that's definitely why anyone gets into any first responder field, is that ability to help folks. But I think it's also my ability to adapt and seeing how, when things come in, how I can adjust and how I pivot and how I problem solve. Like, it's all like, like it's cool to walk out and go, I rock that call, or like that call was wild and I was still able to, create some calm in this chaos. So helping people, of course, but it's also nice to see us perform well, the people who are doing the work.
Yeah. I like how you said like adapt, because I totally like even your energy right now. It's like you can probably, I feel like I'm kind of the same, like read people's energy and kind of like connect with them. Like even if you don't physically see them or are physically in the same room, you can like kind of connect. You can feel their energy and like can tell like how stressed they are, what they need from you. And you can kind of be like that chameleon, which is such a great quality of a dispatcher, which is awesome. What is the best advice you can give to someone thinking of going into a career as a dispatcher?
Well, of course, they should head to the raspydispatcher.com and check out.
Yes.
But no, genuinely, do your research. I mean, this job is tough. It's not for everyone. And if you get into the process and you get to a certain point, maybe you get to the sit-along and you walk out and you're like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
All day. Pull out, live your best life, There's no shame in trying. It is a long process. It's a process that sometimes you got to get in it, do the thing to figure out if you're good at it or not. It's one of those things that not everyone's built for. But to do your research, to see if the general aspects of the job is something that interests you, something that you want to do for 12, 14 hours a day,
Right.
And also, and I think maybe most importantly, do the research on the department that you're attempting to go to.
Great point.
Not all departments are built the same, not all departments are built the same. Some are struggling and they're understaffed. Some don't have the best cultures built into their centers. And yes, there is a world where we need to get into these centers. We need to make them better, so on and so forth. But that's not for everyone. Not everyone's wanting to go in and fix a center and a new job. So
right.
Research, figure out what schedule they're on, figure out what the realities in that center are, and if they're going to work for you.
Did they offer sit-alongs at most departments if you are in this field? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Most departments offer sit-alongs, especially in the application process. If they don't, honestly, red flag. If you're not letting me sit along and to see about this job, it's such an easy thing to do for a department. Yeah. It's a free thing to do. Tell the applicant to come in, let them plug in, let them see the environment they're going to be working in. They might bail at that. If they bail, cool. No one wasted anyone's time or money.
Right. No wasted resources or time. But that's something I didn't know that you could even do. And I think that like you even pointing out the culture, it's like I don't think people realize that that's a part of every job, but dispatching as well is like you are in a room with these people. You're not by yourself. With 12 hours a day, you also have to have good camaraderie with your officers. Like there is a connection between dispatch and officers, a huge connection. Yeah. And then obviously your coworkers and how you're treated with command staff. So that's like an awesome point that I personally didn't even consider or think about for you guys.
Yeah. And I mean, the toxicity in dispatch is like a common thing. You go into any of these like Facebook groups that are just general private Facebook groups about dispatching, you're going to see a lot of like negative stuff. It's a reality. We have a reputation in dispatch for eating our young. I don't know if like dispatch trainers don't like time off, but like for some reason we make it so hard sometimes for trainees to get off of training, which essentially is upping our staffing and creating us to have the ability to have time off if we're in a center that's short staffed. But historically, some dispatchers are mean and they're like, you can't do this job, or, we're not supportive or what. And I think we're shifting from that, but they still exist and they're out there. And I talk to dispatchers all the time in my DMs who are like, my trainer hates me. They don't talk to me, like all these things. So those things matter. And I think they're worth asking direct questions about during the interview, because we all want to get the job. Like, I get that. Like, we all want to get the job. But the reality is that the first responder field has shifted so much, in the sense that back in the day, there was thousands of applicants, one job slot,
Right.
Now there's thousands of job slots, 6 applicants, and only 2 of those are worth anything, So
Right.
the reality is it's a buyer's market, it's you are the prize, go into these interviews acting like it, because if that agency is hiring, the neighboring agency is hiring. So
Right.
you get your pick, you get to shop a little and own that, take that,
Yeah, no, I love that. There's definitely toxicity in the police world and my world as a police officer too. But I love that you're like, because dispatchers are a lot of the times like the unsung heroes. Like you're not seen, so sometimes it's like your voice isn't heard. And I think it's important to let these people know who are getting into the field that they should ask these tough questions. Like it's still a full-time job. It's a hard job. You got to think on your feet. You got to hear, like you said, people's worst day. And the last thing you need is to be in a toxic environment. And I would say the same if a police officer is listening, go on a ride along and get to know the culture of the police department. Same thing. So these are important things to ask. I love that. So off that topic, what struggles have you personally faced as a dispatcher?
I've lateraled from my first agency. So I was at my first agency for almost 4.5 years. And then I've been at my new agency for about a little over 2 years. And I think the hardest part that I found in my personal career so far is learning the job all over again, because every agency does this job that is essentially the same job so differently. I went from a large agency where we had a warrants channel. I never ran anybody out. All I did was trip a plate, give a status back. But then my guy left over to this other channel and once, did his thing and came back. Like, I didn't understand what they were actually doing out there because it wasn't part of my job at that agency. And my new agency, I had to learn to run, full information, full 29s on people, read warrants, read 290 hits, read, restraining order, like all these things,
Yes.
turns that come back, and you're doing it quickly,
So quickly.
Turns as quick as you can, common names like John Smith. You're like, you gotta wait. There's like hundreds of hits, So learning that part, and I'm still not the best at it because it's just this whole other language you're learning, but getting through relearning the job and like this imposter phenomenon, because I was a good dispatcher at my old agency. Why do I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing here? And it's simply because everyone does it differently and you're learning a new language. So I think for me, that was the toughest, like lateraling, not for the weak. I would never want to do it again.
Yeah, we are living lateral lives because I just lateral transferred to my new agency. And I totally can relate. It's like learning a new job all over again. And you feel like I'm not a rookie. Like I already know my shit. And you call it to do. Right. But when you said like when you were running names and stuff, I think people don't realize. And it's like even hearing you talk as a police officer is so funny because sometimes I'm waiting on the other line of the radio. And I'm like, what's taking so long? Yeah. And it is horrible because I'm not, you guys are robots.
Yeah.
Like our patience does run thin sometimes. And Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you say because it's so true. But like so like for our listeners, it's like if I'm doing a traffic stop as a police officer and I get someone's driver's license, I will put it on the air for my dispatcher to run through all of their criminal history or whatever they have, warrants, restraining orders, whatever. They will have to filter through that for me in a minute, maybe.
Yeah.
And send it back to me with the correct information. So I'm not letting this guy go drive off if he's, wanted.
Yeah.
And that's a huge responsibility. And I, like I said, even talking to you, I'm realizing like, I know what a job you guys have, but it's so wild to like put it in speaking terms, just to sit.
Yeah. And for the listeners and for the other officers out there, you can even take it another step. In a smaller agency, it's just me and my partner back there. So my partner's answering phones, I'm running radio, but if the phones all blow up, it is me on radio and me on phones and my partner answering phones. So I'm doing both. You're putting out stops. I'm answering 911 while I'm trying to manage your stop. So sometimes, like recently, I've had to tell my officer they wanted us to call DOJ to check on a 290 status. And I literally was like, we'll get to it when we can. Like, because we're so in here that it's just me. I literally sit on the road. It's just me and my partner. It's gonna be delayed. Like, we're fielding stuff. So I think that's something that officers don't think of very often, and it's no one's fault. It's just our two realities don't coincide, right? Like, you're sitting up there like, well, they're just answering phones or they're just at their computer, and it's like, I only sent you to the one call I dropped, but I answered 60, and got those calls, so it's just a reality gap that we have between the field and dispatch,
Do you think that it would be beneficial, and I think the answer is probably yes, but for officers to do sit-alongs?
We have our officers do sit-along. So every officer that comes into our department is required as part of their training, even if they're a lateral, even if they're just fresh out the academy, to do a sit-along as part of their, and that's mostly so we can tell them like the simplest things that have nothing to do with you that you wouldn't think. So my officer's like, I want to run a name. I have to type a certain key to run someone's full last name, first name, right? But then they give me the driver's license number instead of the name. Well, that's a different key. So now I have to backpedal, while you're going out with the thing, I have to go back and redo, so just simple things like that. When you certain language you use sets me up to do something, and then you it, and then that, so simple things like that we like to tell our officers, and especially the new folks out there, is just like, when you say it this way, I think you're gonna do this, and when you switch it, and some things we can't control, right? Like, if you go to a call, you get out and it's right into a physical with someone, you're not going to put out the best radio traffic, but routine things we train to do a certain way because of this, so it's good conversation, especially with the
I think it should be more than just in training. I think maybe even yearly we should sit in and even at a restaurant as a server, you should have to sit back there with the cooks one day. You should have to see what is the machine that, is behind you serving those plates. We all need to know what every turned wheel in this, big company is doing to put out the best results. We all need to learn each other's stuff. So I think, it's so interesting to hear, because I did do a sit-along, like you said, in my training process, but that was 6 years ago. Yeah. It's it's so easy to forget and just get wrapped up into what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, a bare minimum, just knowing your people, right? People that I talk to you every day.
Every day.
But you're out of uniform. I'm like, who is that again?
Yeah. Wow. I feel like I need to bring brownies or something to my dispatchers today.
We will always take this ad.
Yes. So on that note as well, do you ever feel underappreciated as a dispatcher?
I think for me, historically, I've had really good luck with my department and my career. And I know that's not the same for, I talk to people who are, overworked, underpaid, just notches in the machine, and I know those things exist. But I've been really lucky in the sense that even I went to Sacramento Police Department, wasn't the first department I worked at, very large department. I mean,
Yeah.
if the officer didn't work where my center was, if that wasn't their beat, we never seen them. Like we knew our officers by their cadence and by their identifiers. Like 2 Alpha 6, that guy annoys me. He takes forever to go to a call. Like you don't know their name though, but their mannerisms, the way they work, that's how we knew them. With this department, it's smaller, and I know these guys. I know about their lives, I know about their families, I know about their kids, all that stuff. So there is a different aspect of it, and something else to consider when you're going through the process, what kind of relationship you want
Totally.
with officers and with the department. But overall, I've had really supportive mentors, really supportive trainers. When I started doing, Raspy Dispatcher was brought to life at Sacramento Police Department. Everyone was like on board for me doing this thing. And it's really grown from what it really started as to what it is now.
Yeah.
So I've been really, really lucky. But I do want to acknowledge that I know that's not the reality for so many departments and so many places.
Like you said, recognizing people in person. And I'm a problem in this area as well. It's like when I go up to my dispatch, it's typically only when I need something from them. And I feel like I can make it a point to just go say hello, because we are a team.
Yeah, and you know what? They don't let us out of our box, so come see us.
Right, we gotta come see you.
Half the time there isn't even a window in there, so
Yeah, ours has like a little window, like a drive-through window.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's important. I definitely will make, and I think about it on shift here and there. I'm like, I gotta go say hi today, and I sometimes it gets busy and I forget, but some of the dispatchers I work with have quite literally, like saved my life or my partner's lives. And it's like so important to acknowledge like what you guys do for us. So I'm going to get better at that. So you mentioned your podcast. So tell us about how you decided to make your podcast, the Raspy Dispatcher.
Yeah, so the Raspy Dispatcher, the Let's Talk Dispatch podcast, it is really a spinoff, per se, of my YouTube channel, the Raspy Dispatcher, which is where it all kind of started. There's a lot of informational videos on there for pre-employment stuff, aspiring dispatcher stuff, practice test stuff. And at a point, I was like, well, I've done all this, one-on-one by myself. Like, I want to start branching out and talking to people that have more knowledge and more experience and just more worldview on this niche group than I do. So I started tricking my friends that I met on the conference circuit into coming on to a show with me. And we were just recording it really just for YouTube at first. And then one of my friends was like, well, why don't you just put out the podcast? You have the audio, you're doing the thing already, like just push it out in audio format too. And I was like, okay, I could do that. So it's grown into the podcast. It's just grown into this information hub that just kind of welcomes everybody.
Yeah.
Current dispatchers, former dispatchers, companies, nonprofits and for-profit companies that work for first responders or who have a really special niche for first responders can come on, share their resources. And, I've talked to a 3-week dispatcher who did it for 3 weeks, had a toxic environment, hated it, and left. And they wanted to come on and talk about it. And I'm like, I'm here for it. We're not here to just tell people like, this is a wonderful job, come save life. Like, that's just not the reality. We have so much work to do. We are trying to make this industry better. We're trying to be better 911 dispatchers, 911 call takers. We have a lot of work to do, and learning from each other and each other's experiences, good and bad, makes us have a better opportunity to learn and be better. So that's kind of what Let's Talk Dispatch has become. We have a private Facebook group as well that welcomes us.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, and it's so opposite of those other Facebook groups I talked about. Like, it's all positive. Like, if you want to go in there and post like, I'm having a trouble with my radio here, which is just being able to hear the officers. And like, you can ask these questions.
Like an open forum of questions.
Yeah,
But
it's
so great.
Forum, baby trainee dispatchers, aspiring dispatchers, if they have a question about their background, like they just ask, and it's always a positive place. Like it's so fun. It's growing to like, we're at almost 1,000 people in there, and it's just an information hub. So it's an awesome place as well.
What is that Facebook group called?
It's called Let's Talk Dispatch. So just like the podcast, it's Let's Talk Dispatch. There's just another information hub for anyone and everyone, current, aspiring, and former dispatchers to come and just pour into each other, you know?
I love that. I feel like there needs to be more like groups like that for people to like just ask questions. Cause like there's so many times where you're afraid to ask questions to like your superiors because you don't want to like feel stupid or whatever. It's so easy to just like post a question there and have a nice community to help you out.
And you know, people ask me questions all the time, and sometimes it's out of my scope of practice. Sometimes I just don't have the knowledge for it. And so I created that space to be able to cast a wider net. Like I had someone message me a question. I was like, I'm going to throw this in my Facebook group because they don't have Facebook. And I was like, I'll screenshot the answers and send it back to you. And so I got like 50 answers from it and send it back to them. Like, there you go. You know, like there's so many places, there's so many people, so many experiences. It's awesome.
I love that. That's great. Like everything that you're doing is so great. And like you said, it's like a niche or market, but at the end of the day, it's in every single police department across every United States. Yeah. And it's not. It's just, it needs to be talked about more, and there needs to be more people like you who are open and helping people, because we need you guys more than anything, you know? So okay, this may be a tough question, but have you ever had an officer in serious danger? And I'm sure you have, on the other end of the radio, and how did you handle that situation?
Yeah, you know, at my first agency, we were, you know, high crime, high priority. I mean, if you weren't working a shooting on your shift, you know, you weren't at work. So it was just one of those, it was a heck of an agency to learn at. You know, I've had multiple officers involved in shootings and multiple officers being shot at. We've had an officer while I was at that department, you know, be killed in the line of duty from a domestic violence call. So we definitely...
Were you working that night that officer...
I wasn't on duty when the incident started, but I came into shift and the incident lasted all through the night. Yeah. It lasted probably like 6 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
Or when you're able to get to the individual. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, even I did a podcast episode about them, Officer Tara Sullivan. And, you know, I never knew this officer because, again, big agency, you know, we don't get to see all of our officers if they're not working in our beat where our center was. And even still, the impact, the loss, hearing their end of watch go out, you know, in my ear on, you know, not on social media the next day, like actually watching my person write it out and dispatching it out. And it's definitely it's a reality check, you know, for I think everyone. But especially dispatch, it definitely impacts us.
Yeah. Like commanding the air. And like you basically turn into a supervisor, like in those moments, because you have to delegate what's important on the air. You have to tell people to basically shut up, and you need to tell, like, it is, I mean, obviously I've experienced it on my end, and what I feel like people don't talk about enough is this, like, being a dispatcher, you have to be ready for shit to hit the fan, and you need to be prepared to take control of that air and do whatever you can to make sure everyone gets in the right place, sets up those perimeters. You're making sure that they have the right, if someone's shot, you got to make sure that they're driving to the right hospital, make sure it's a trauma hospital, like all that stuff. And like, you're blocking off the roads. You're doing so much behind the scenes. And it's like, people need to realize that like what you guys do behind the scenes is like literally saving our lives.
Yeah. And mind you, and I think it's another thing that people don't think about, and I didn't think about it until I lateraled, is like, if a major incident, let's say, you know, forbid a school shooting happens, and it's just me and my partner, and there's thousands of students calling in,
Right.
And
Wow.
me and my partner are fielding thousands of calls. And then I'm on radio and answering phones, trying to get, everyone set up where they need to be set up, trying to get medical staging, trying to get
Right.
helicopters involved. I mean, all these things are being done by two people, which is why it's so important for us to educate citizens about calling 911. If you are calling 911 to request information, you are blocking a line from me talking to a student who's involved in the scenario that we're talking about, a school shooting. So if you're just calling to ask me if we're aware that there's a school shooting, and you have no info, you're blocking a line. And then I have to take time to get you off the line and then pick up a phone where someone who's actually got some info for me. So though I understand parents are scared and people want to know stuff, but we're doing a job that is, high intense. We're trying to get through people. There's so many people calling, and some of these centers have one, they're dealing with that thing. So it's just an education thing, right? If you don't have info and you're not needing info, meaning you're not in it, don't call us on 911,
right?
Because we're busy.
No, that's so important. 911 education. People don't call 911 for the right reasons all the time. And like you said, that could be really taking away from an officer who's in trouble or a serious situation. So if you're listening, make sure you're calling 911 for a very valid reason.
Emergencies. Every agency has a non-emergency number. And and if you call 911 and you say it's not an emergency, that does not change the fact that you called 911. Telling me it's not an emergency does not mean we're not on the 911 line.
Right.
It's super frustrating, but I get it. We panic, we dial these numbers, we know someone will answer, and it's just if you can tell me this is not emergency, then you have the time to look up a number and or should already have that number in your phone because you're listening to the 50 podcast right now and you're stopping and finding a non-emergency number and plug it in.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's such a good point. 911 knowledge. Definitely. Where do you see your career going from here? You already have so much on your plate. You're already doing so many great things. What's your plans for the future?
I'm just taking it day by day, kind of letting it go where it's going to go. I think I would love to be in some type of supervisory directory role in a center.
Totally can see that for you.
Make these things that I believe go top down and, create this cultured environment that I believe all of our centers should have. But as far as the Raspy Dispatcher, I'm starting to do a lot more speaking. I'm starting to create more education around, kind of just generic topics that we need to talk more about, updating our hiring process, utilizing dispatch on our social media teams, just kind of things that I think are not rocket science, but we just don't talk about because as a whole, law enforcement, first responder, we're slow to change.
Yes, we are.
And we hate change. And so sometimes, the response often, especially in dispatch, is well, we've been doing it this way for forever. And I don't know about anybody else, but I don't want to dispatch barefoot and going uphill in the snow just because my trainer did. I can do this. I can do this with less trauma, with a less load, with, I'm cool with that. And I'm cool with the person coming behind me having less to deal with because we've improved things. I think too often we're stuck in this wheel of, I didn't have it easy. And why should they? Because you should have had it easy. I'm sorry that happened to you, but let's not pass on trauma down through our department for 100 years, Right. We have a lot of work to do, and I think easy things can be done to make things better, and sometimes we fight against that. So,
well, naturally, you're speaking all day. You know how to speak on your feet. You definitely have that presence where you can be a speaker, a supervisor. So those are all great things that I think you'd be so great at. What inspires you to do this? You could just go to work and do your job. But is it like you said, changing that culture? Is that your main thing? Or is it just in your nature to just want to just help in all aspects of life.
I definitely think it's in my nature to just not know when to quit. I have 2 master's degrees. I'm always just trying to do the most. So that's definitely in my nature, and I'm trying to learn to do less.
Same girl. I would.
But I think for this specifically, it actually comes from feeling a little disrespected after I completed, this academy training. And, like I said, I got my master's in undergrad in administration of justice, went through 6 years of higher education for law enforcement. I get into a law enforcement department as a dispatcher, go through academy, which was rough. I mean, it was 7 weeks of just, am I going to get fired this week because I don't pass this test? Like, oh, we're still hired. Like, it's great. And then I survived training, which is training probation. It's about 18 months. I do all this and I get to the end of it and I look back and I'm like, wow, 6 years of higher education on law enforcement and we never talked about dispatch. Like, we never.
What? That is wild.
We never talk about dispatch. We go to school for criminal justice and they train you to be a cop. Like, period. Wow. They're educating for patrol, which we need officers. Totally valid. But not everyone who leaves school from criminal justice, if they even get a full degree, because you only need like 26 credits, right?
Yeah.
You might get into the field, might hate it. You might get into the field, blow a knee. There's so many things that could happen in trying to pursue a career in law enforcement that we should talk about the other options you have available.
You are like hitting the nail on the head. That is so crazy.
There's so many other options. And it's not that dispatch is the fallback or the I planned didn't work out and now I'm here. It's just, it's another viable option. Like, you can very well get into the field and not want to touch, smell, or see, anything. You're like, I didn't think this would bother me, but now I have someone's poop on my hand and I don't like that. I was out here on a perimeter for 7 hours and I would really just like the option to pee. These are
literally,
these are just things like people don't want to spend the day doing. And so dispatch is another option to be able to directly help people to be involved in first responder, whether it's law enforcement or the fire department, and still have my heater on all day. These are,
yes.
And so I was just like annoyed.
Wow, that's so true. Like, I think about that either. I have my master's in public safety administration and we never talked about dispatch.
And I was one of those people, I kept my books. So I was real petty. And I went to like the index and was like, communications, nothing. Dispatch, nothing. Like, what? It's nowhere in here.
So wild.
A footnote, and that's not okay.
It's not okay. We literally can't run without you. Like, what would we do? Like,
Like, think of the time you guys have NDT issues or radio issues or we're fixing it in the sense that we're calling people, making stuff where, if the radios go down, like, we're activated. We're pulling out backup lines. We're pulling out phones. We're dispatching. The pivot is wild in dispatch when it comes to technology crashing. But
100%.
Yeah, we just need to talk about dispatch more as a career. Not a backup plan, but a career. And
100%.
For folks who are interested in this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that is so great. Like, wow. Because I know, a ton of dispatchers and they love it. And this is the career that they wanted to go into in the first place. And like you said, there's a girl I know, she's a dispatcher. And she's like, I wanted to be a dispatcher because I'm nosy as fuck. And I just wanted to hear the drama. But I didn't want to be in it. That's one here, and I'm like,
to smell it, but I want to be, I want to keep it. People,
this, like, I love that. But you are part of law enforcement. You are saving lives. You are shutting shit down. Like, we need you.
I mean, especially think about it. The dispatchers who are doing medical, they're delivering babies like before first responders even get there.
100%.
Yeah, like you're
telling me what to do. You're telling people on the radio how to administer CPR, deliver a baby.
You're getting a 6-year-old to do CPR on their grandpa. I mean, like, applaud to the medical dispatchers out there. You folks are like superhuman, I'm just like, where'd the shooter go, But folks who are like getting someone to perform life-saving, hands-on medical stuff before anyone even gets there. Like, those folks are, applause to them. They're doing the dispatch on 1,000% because it's just, and people do, like, you call 911, fire department comes, but like there's hopefully 10-minute or less response time that something is happening that whole time that those people are driving there, and it's the dispatchers providing direction, whether it's how to be safe, or whether it's how to administer CPR, how to so it's
like, and you provide vital information like on the way there. You could be gathering information, obviously, that we are unaware about. Like, on the way to a call, it could be a simple, well, it's never simple, a domestic, right?
Yeah.
We're on the way, and then you could let me know, just for information, we just found out that there's a gun in the home. The husband, for instance, does own a weapon, just for officer safety. Like, those little things, those pieces of knowledge that we get on the way to a call comes from our dispatch. And it's so important the way we approach certain situations is because of the additional information that you guys are getting from the other line, asking those important questions to ensure that your officers are safe.
Yeah, especially if they're seen with, like, what pocket did they put the gun in? Like, even something simple and specific as that. Like, they're saying he's putting it in his back left pocket. Like, some of my officers know, like, all right, I'm looking that way, and that's where it is. That's where we're going to find it. That's where we need to be aware of, things like that.
Yeah, amazing. I feel like I need to go hug all my dispatch. Well, any final takeaways for our listeners? Anyone who's listening here, and then let us know where we can find you, listen to your podcast, find you on Instagram, find your Facebook page. You're like me. We're doing too much, but I love it.
Yeah.
So, what are your final takeaways for us, and then where can we find you?
My final takeaways are, if you don't have at least a weekly, check-in with your dispatch as patrol or as fire department, try to do your best to just get some FaceTime up there. We care about you folks. We do have a very high stake in wanting you to go home safe. I promise that we don't try to be rude or load you with paper, or, we really do try to keep things very even. But most of the time, we just want to do our jobs well. We understand that you guys have realities that we have no idea about. And the same goes, for us. We have realities that sometimes our patrol folks don't fully understand either. So, communication, understanding, and connection bridges those gaps to where, if I thought, you had an attitude and I know you, I'm like, oh, they're probably just dealing with something. I'm gonna lean towards the other than lean towards being upset about it when it really wasn't that deep. For the aspiring folks out there, whether it's dispatch or patrol or, any first responder field, is do your research. You are the prize. What do you want your life to look like for the next 10, 15, maybe more years? Do you want to work graveyard? Do you want to work 8s? Do you want to work 10s? All those things are super important to figure out what, works for you. I have a dispatcher in my center now who loves 10s, and I'm like, I could never go back to 10s. That sounds terrible. So do your research, figure out what's a good fit for you. And if you are considering the dispatch side of things, we have lots of resources at the raspydispatcher.com. On all the social medias, it's all the Raspy Dispatcher, and the podcast itself is Let's Talk Dispatch Podcast.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Like, you've literally opened my mind. I already had an immense respect for dispatchers because of true lived experiences that I've had. And I have even more now. And I totally think that you are making changes, and I'm like really impressed by you. And I think that it's awesome what you're doing. And I hope that not only people who are inspired by this become dispatchers, but I hope that first responders who are listening to this, like, truly, like, get that FaceTime, like you said. And I'm going to make it, I'm going to probably go get some like cookies or something and watch ours today. Because you guys are in that room and you're like truly the unsung heroes that don't get enough FaceTime and don't get enough recognition for doing all that you do. So thank you so much for being here. Can't wait for people to hear this one. But yeah, go follow her online, join her Facebook group. I'm sure you will answer DMs if people have it.
For sure.
You're super kind and gracious. So thank you so much, Ashley, and be safe. And thank you for all that you do. We appreciate you more than you know.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was wonderful. And thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
All right.